Greetings, and welcome to this brief introduction to Plato's dialogue, The Letters. Now, the tradition calls Plato's Letters a dialogue, one of his 36 dialogues. So let's try reading it as we would any other dialogue. So first, who is the main character? Clearly, it's Plato. In contrast, the character who dominates the other 35 dialogues, one way or the other, is Socrates. So we could say those 35 are Socratic dialogues, and this is the only Platonic dialogue. Next, I think we can also say that this is a voluntary dialogue. At various points, Plato in these letters appears to debate going to Sicily to visit the tyrant Dionysius. But in the end, he accepts Dionysius's invitations. Now, Sicily was a long way from Athens. Plato could have politely declined, as he shows in the 11th letter, which he wrote to another ruler, saying, "Sorry, a sea voyage is too dangerous for me right now." Or, "My apologies, I've got a kidney stone." But he doesn't. He chooses to engage. So who are his interlocutors in this dialogue? Well, Dionysius, the tyrant of Sicily, in the early to mid-300s BC, receives the largest number of letters. 4 others are addressed to Dionysius's uncle, Dion, or people connected to Dion. Now, Dion was a student of Plato, and he became a rival for Dionysius's rule. 2 other letters are addressed to Plato's colleague, Archytas, whom Plato asked to spend time at Dionysius's court. So 10 of the 13 letters relate one way or another to Dionysius. The remaining 3 letters are to people unconnected with Sicily, but all 3 concern politics, especially monarchical politics. Plato's letters, then, is a dialogue with the sole ruler, the monarch, particularly Dionysius, the tyrant. Now, if we read the letters this way, as a single dialogue, we can also begin to see its drama, its action, which I'll summarize briefly in the rest of my comments here. So, in the first letter, Plato blames Dionysius for kicking him out of Sicily. He makes clear that Dionysius has done wrong, and Plato has gained nothing by it. It is a safe beginning. According to Plato, tyranny bad. In contrast, the second letter shows Plato attempting to engage the tyrant. He's concerned, but he's hopeful. He recommends that they honor each other, appealing to reputation, something the tyrant understands well. In the third letter, Plato scolds Dionysius for his addiction to pleasure, but Plato also defends himself as a sort of advisor to the tyrant. The net effect of these first 3 letters is to make the reader wonder, why did Plato choose to go to Dionysius twice? The next 3 letters present a different angle on the philosopher's relation to monarchs. The 4th letter, to Dion, the man who would be king, offers a warning. Dion is too focused on his own honor. He should try to be more pleasing to other people. Dion needs to up his public relations game. In the 5th letter, written to the young king of Macedon, Plato offers a second tip to monarchs. Study political science and apply its learnings. Yet he also sounds a note of warning. If the regime is too old and sick, as was Athens' democracy, Plato says, all the learning in the world won't help. So then, in the 6th letter, written to a petty tyrant and his 2 neighbors in Ionia, Plato offers this addition. To secure their rule, rulers must be clear about their interests, and even then they must swear oaths and sanctify their agreements, that is, their laws. So, in addition to good PR, political science, even self-interest, you still need the gods. At this point, the dialogue pauses, and Plato offers a long narrative account in the 7th letter of his 3 visits to Sicily. This long speech delivers a clear message. What a mess Plato made there. This account forces us to wonder why Plato made this part of his life, as opposed to, say, his conversations with Socrates, the main focus of his sole Platonic dialogue. Then, the 8th letter offers a response to the mess Plato made. The Sicilians should set up a Sparta-like mixed regime, involving 3 kings, a council, and a public assembly. Now, even on its face, this solution sounds very unrealistic. If he were still alive at that point, one can imagine Dionysius smiling his most tyrannic smile at it. As if to move quickly from this unpromising proposal, in the 9th letter, Plato exhorts his colleague Archytas not to forget to honor his fatherland. If the tyrant were reading, he could respond that it's, well, precisely he who concerns himself most with his fatherland. And he could also reply, well, Plato, what about your fatherland, Athens? Another strike for Plato. In the 10th letter, written to a friend of Dion, Plato extols philosophy as the ground of friendship. It's true. But the tyrant could respond that, regrettably, the desire for rule makes friendship impossible. Look at Dion, murdered by his seeming friends. Plato makes another try in the 11th letter. He speaks about the fundamental importance of a daily regimen to a community. Even the tyrant is not self-made. He is a product of his regimen, unless and until he finds a better teacher, a friend, who will order his daily life. But this is indeed the very thing that Dionysius suspected, that Plato would attempt to rule him. So, in the 12th letter, written again to his colleague Archytas, Plato shares the example of friends who remind each other that writing is nothing but reminders, reminders of thought, your own thought, not for publication or even publishable, and hence not available for honor and fame, but still your own. Now, does the tyrant have such a possession? Again, one can imagine the tyrant smiling as if to say, wouldn't you like to know? These 5 letters, the 8th to the 12th, all argue indirectly with the tyrant. All 5 offer powerful arguments, but none seems ultimately decisive. So we come to the last letter, the 13th, which turns out to be the first letter in terms of chronology. At its head stands an ironic warning, denied to be Plato's. Why? Well, it is like the first, a most private letter, written directly to Dionysius, here alone acknowledged as, quote, tyrant of the Syracusans. But here, Plato is pals with the tyrant. He helps out Dionysius in the rudiments of justice, pay back what you owe. Even more strikingly, Plato seeks to please the tyrant, with luxuries of all things. It must leave the reader of this dialogue wondering, is Plato so clearly the winner of this argument? Or, as so often appears to happen to Socrates too, is Plato by the end at a loss? Thank you for joining this brief introduction to Plato's dialogue, The Letters.